Hi everybody. So today, as I was speaking with somebody, with a group of people, I kind of hold these conversations sometimes that I talk to people about certain topics that are super important to me. I talk to friends topics that are very important in terms of how I think about them, and it's mostly scientific topics, and it could be also topics across different genres of science. It can be anything. It just has to be kind of connected to the curiosity that is always running inside of my mind. And as I was speaking about something, I always try to put my attention to my manner of speech. And sometimes I talk in a very shaky way, not that my voice is shaking, but the whole concept that I'm trying to point out to, or the things that I'm trying to say, sounds very shaky, and it feels like I don't even believe in them. And I'm just saying it to kind of sound like I do have something to say, when in fact I have nothing to say, and I'm just opening my mouth for no reason. And I tried to keep quiet whenever I don't have anything to add on to the conversation, but that I have this control freak sort of feature inside of my psyche, and it always wants to you know make the conversation so much better, and I try to do that all the time without me even having it as an intention. It's just it goes very naturally with me, and because of my control freak problem, not but that's exactly it. And so even as if I'm as I am talking right now, I feel like if I'm being honest with myself, and if I care too much about the topic, then I'm gonna forget about everything, forget about sounding like I do have something to say, sounding like I am quite knowledgeable. I forget about all of that. And the topic becomes very important to me, that the whole idea of trying to assess my language kind of goes away, and then it becomes all about me producing ideas from a pure place of caring about that specific topic. So I think being authentic and sounding authentic means quite a few things. And in action, we can take it apart and we can try to emulate what's going on inside of a person who's speaking with authenticity. And it really shows whenever you listen to somebody, if they are full of it, if they're just trying to say something and sound smart or sound knowledgeable, then you're gonna feel that lack of vigor or lack of rigor, I guess, or thoroughness inside of their speech. And it almost feels very awkward for you to hear them talk about it. And you yourself, if you're actually feeling that a lack of authenticity, you're gonna feel weird, and you're gonna feel that awkwardness that rises in social situations and also in different conversations. So we need to, excuse me here, I'm just okay. So we need to take a step back and trying to assess our own mind. Do we actually care about the topic that we're talking about? Do we really think that we have so much to offer and something to actually contribute to the topic, not to sound smart? Don't take it personally. Don't take anything personally. If you're doing anything for serving others, or trying to help other people, you have to remove yourself from the whole equation. And it has to be very authentic. It has to be honest. It has to be from the place of you caring too much about that, as if you don't even matter, and that goal is the only thing that matters, and you're gonna run towards it, even if there's thorn in the ground, and you're gonna really forget about every obstacle that might come your way, just because that objective is so strong and so fiery in your eyes that you just cannot help but actually be focused and concentrated on the matter in hand, and forget completely about yourself. So like you become very consumed by this beautiful objective that you have in your mind. And that's when you become authentic, like when you have, and there are so many other aspects to authenticity, which I'm gonna go into the depth of. But for now, let's try to explore this concept, this other dimension of authenticity, which is like the first thing that you need to acquire is to be able to care too much about that objective, that topic, that subject that you're trying to talk about, and then try to talk from a place of passion and care, and too much, attention to the core of action and what's gonna be helpful so that you can contribute in that specific way. So like you're trying to assess what's gonna be helpful, not assess how you're gonna come off, how much people are gonna think that you're smart, or you're quite a very informed person or individual. It's like, it's not about you. You have to remove yourself from the conversation and only care about the truth. Only care about what's actually the conclusion of the conversation. You have to become so curious. Yeah, I think that's another part of it. That another component of being really passionate is like being curious, which is like actually the foundation of being passionate. So like if without curiosity there's no passion. So we have to like invoke this sense of passion so much for that concept, or for that topic that we want to discuss and we want to express our ideas on, so that we kind of forget all about ourselves. And we have to train ourselves to be like that. So it's not just like in speaking that you might feel a bit awkward in your stance and how you're trying to fit into the conversation, but it's also related to when you're writing an essay, for example, or you're writing a commentary on something. Like you're writing, I don't know, maybe literary criticism, maybe you're criticizing a part of a work by an author or something like that. Whatever you're doing, you have to come from the place of curiosity and trying so hard to get to the bottom of the matter, not to come off as a person who's like, yeah, very knowledgeable and authoritative. No, that should be removed. So that's the component of curiosity that we need to put into place. We need to never forget about the fact that without having that spark inside of our mind, we're never going to be able to divert our attention into the core of the topic and the matter at hand, and it's probably never going to lead to any productive conversation or any productive discussion. So it's better for us to assess our mindset before we go into any conversation, before even we like give a speech about anything. We need to know whether or not we believe in it deeply. We need to know if we are invested fully in the whole field that we're trying to express our ideas in. And if we find ourselves to not be so attached to the idea of finding the truth of the matter, then we're probably not gonna do a great job of contributing to the entire truth of the whole conversation, and the conclusion of the conversation is probably not gonna be that great, just because we didn't give it our best. We didn't give it our entire attention and our entire capacity to conjure up something that can probably lead to some conclusive ideas that can come out of that intellectual conversation that we're holding, or even speeches that people give. Like if you're giving speeches in public, then you have to have a certain mindset that is pretty curious about that topic. And like it really matters if you have if you have been questioning that and you have been trying to figure out how that can fit into your own life. So personalizing it in a way that is not in the right way, right? This way you're actually talking about something that is in your own life, but you're not diverting the attention to you, you're diverting the attention to absolutely the absolute idea that you're trying to discuss. So you're putting your attention into the right place, and at the same time personalizing it so that you have that like deeply anchored sense of belonging in that field that you're trying to discuss. So it's probably like a vital sense, like you have this vital urgency inside of you that keeps urging you into trying to research about that topic and trying to gain as much knowledge on it so that you can get to the bottom of it. You can you can figure out what is the conclusion of that. And it's not like so that you can give out a great speech. No. If anything, in the process of giving the speech, you're trying to figure it out for yourself. And that should be the only thing here. So like your speech should be just a documentation of the journey that you've been through to figure out the truth of that specific topic that you're trying to discuss. It's not the outcome that you're like your speech is not the outcome. The outcome is the truth and the revelation that has been given to you through the process. And it's the only thing that you need to care about. And if you're caring about anything else, then your attention has been diminished and you're not contributing your entire capacity to that specific topic that you're trying to expand on and elaborate on in some novel and noble way. So first thing that we need to do, and I'm repeating myself here again and again, I'm sorry for that because like I feel like sometimes I do emphasize on some points so much, but I would say that in this case, this emphasis is actually pretty solicited, and it's not an unsolicited emphasis or attention that I'm giving to this, because it's very important to have curiosity. The curiosity component is very important because that's how authenticity comes across. Like if you're not really invested in the idea, then you're never going to be authentic, and you're gonna feel that awkward feeling rising up inside of you as you're holding that conversation and trying to lead these lines of thinking into some sort of like ideal version of that of the conclusion of the conversation, I guess. So it's very important for us to keep that in mind and have that element of curiosity. And for us to have that, it's like it doesn't exist by itself. Like you can't just be born with curiosity. You have to work hard for it. You have to actually make yourself curious about something. You have to find that spark inside of you by exposing yourself too much to the ground of the topic, like that topic, that field. For example, you're trying to talk about physics or some sort of concept in physics that even as a journalist or as a person who's like completely outside of the field and wants to actually contribute something to the general audience and like some general knowledge about anything. It could be any science, biology, for all I care. So it's the foundation of all of that would be like really being curious by exposing yourself to those people that have the same amount of curiosity, or to read so many essays on it and try to figure out why it actually matters. So like curiosity doesn't come if it doesn't matter. It has to matter in some ways. If not practical, then theoretical. If not theoretical, then this and that. Like it has to be at some point very important in some ways. And that can spark so much curiosity. And so like you're training yourself to be curious by writing about it, by speaking about it, by trying to expose yourself to the field, and be so tuned to the whole idea of speaking about it. So like you're actually getting familiarized with the concept of how to be curious while you're holding the speech, not just like beforehand and in the research process, but actually in the process of you giving the speech to the audience, and trying to not come off as a person who's like prepared this elongated lecture or speech and just wants to spew out some information that has been given to him, but to absolutely show that you're pretty much, even in the process of giving a speech, your mind is at work, and you're trying to figure out along with the audience, and you're trying to ask questions so that the audience is prompted to think in terms of those concepts, I guess. So it's about reading books. It's about exposing yourself to those ideas, and like you might say, well, what if I'm not interested in it in the first place? What if I'm not interested in physics or chemistry or any sciences that you're talking about, any sort of knowledge? What if I'm not interested in literature? What if I'm not interested in linguistics? You are gonna become very interested in it and very curious about it if you expose yourself to it long enough. If you surround yourself with the people that are super curious about that and are super passionate, and they talk with this beautiful this aura of curiosity, and trying to gain knowledge in that like beautiful realm of like intellectual I guess field that you're trying to explore. So like you have to be immersed in the process, and that's the only way you can bring about some curiosity inside of you, and you can like really have this wellspring of ideas that leads to other sources of curiosities, and it just goes into this beautiful recursive loop of you being curious about something, and then it leads to another loop that you kind of go through, and it's the best loop. I mean, it's kind of like what's the opposite of vicious cycle? Vicious cycle, and it's like glorious cycle, gracious cycle, I don't know, whatever. It's some sort of like a very productive epiphany, and you have to hold on to it. So what about like other aspects of it that I just mentioned in the a few minutes ago? I said like there are so many other aspects to it other than curiosity that makes you authentic when you're speaking about something. Well, okay, so I figured what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, like, whenever you come across something that you don't know anything about, or when you're talking, you kind of feel lost in some part of your speech, you have to not conceal it. You have to expose yourself and be vulnerable in that state, and then maybe just like fish something out of that vulnerability, like do something productive with it, so that you're being curious very visibly, and you're at the same time like your limit, and you're not trying to conceal that limit. So whenever that thought is rising up, don't try to push it down. Try to actually express it and say whatever you're thinking. If you say whatever you're thinking, whatever it is that you're thinking, without so much a filter, without so much like, I'm not saying like you have to speak inappropriately. Of course, like you have to have some limits, but not limits that actually makes you this perfect speaker. Like you don't want to always have this filter inside of your mind that is filtering out words or sentences to just like become so freaking perfect at speaking and sound very smart. You have to show it all, and not try to dampen it too much. You have to express your ideas widely across every part of your mind faculty. And when you do that, you come to notice that, well, you feel so much lighter in your psyche and in your heart. Like you feel very light, and you feel like you don't feel bad at all anymore. You don't feel inauthentic, even though you're actually showing the lack of knowledge in some areas that you're encountering. You are, in a way, being authentic and being honest with yourself and the audience that you're trying to have a conversation or have like give a speech to. And that's just too much about, like, that's just so much about how you're only curious to know what the conclusion of that topic is, and you're not there to be the component of the speech. You're there to contribute to the component of the speech. And that's a very great distinction that we need to keep in mind whenever we go on to express our ideas in any sort of occasion. So, like, you have to remove yourself. You have to have that capacity to remove yourself from it and try to, like, mess up. Even if you have social anxiety, like social, I guess, like that stress that rise up when you want to give a public speech or you're having conversations in a very large group, it feels very daunting, and it feels like, oh my god, I have to filter myself and I have to come off as this perfect person who can speak very smoothly and without any falter, and that kind of holds you back, because now what you're paying attention to is not the actual speech that you're trying to have. It's not the topic at hand, it's actually your state of mind, your fears, and the fact that people are going to judge you or something like that. Whatever it is, whatever fear you have, that is stealing your capacity to think on the topic, your capacity to contribute your cognitive faculties to the topic, rather than to just like these fears that are percolating through your mind, and just hindering the thought process that can lead to some productive conversation. So having yourself, like, it really takes a lot of time, actually. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of practice. You have to practice with yourself when you're speaking to yourself. Even you have to, like, remove yourself from it and try not to be very fluent in the way you speak, or express your ideas in a very grandiose manner, like using words that are just super rich and intellectual. Don't try to do all of that. Try to figure out what sort of idea is the most viable idea to pursue at that specific time. Try to figure out, like, what are the dots that you can connect with each other, and you can, like, come up with that beautiful grandiose speech. But that should not be the attention. That should not be where you put your attention to. So, like I just said, like, you don't want to be paying attention to the product of your speech. You don't want to be paying attention to the result of what is going to come out of your mouth. You have to pay attention to the sentences that you're actually pronouncing right now. You have to pay attention to the ideas, not how you're going to turn up, how your speech is going to sound. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to not even, like, you're not always going to make the best piece of like you're not always going to be able to express the best ideas, and that should not be the goal. So, like, again, if that's the goal, then you're diverting your attention to something else rather than the process of making ideas. Like, you're trying so hard to make the best ideas, and that should not be the goal. That should not be the mental model that you have to adopt when you're speaking with any sort of audience, with any type of audience. You have to have the mental model of, well, what's the best viable idea right now? Like, what's the most sensible idea that can connect something that we've been talking about before, and can make me much more curious and like can spark some curiosity in other people's minds. So I feel like I've been talking about this and at the same time training myself to be like that, right? As like even as I'm talking to you guys about this whole thing, it's like a recursive thing that like even inside of my mind right now, I'm trying to always shift my attention to what I can say right now, not the entirety of this video or this podcast is like how this podcast is going to turn out to be. So like it really requires a huge ton of training and everyday practice, and you can't achieve it at one try. You can't just like be this very relaxed, comfortable speaker who can come up with ideas on spot without caring too much about what others are going to think. And maybe the ideas are going to be ridiculous, but as you mess up and mess up and mess up, and like as you actually produce more and more ridiculous ideas, you come to notice that it doesn't kill you. So it's not such a big deal. I mean, like, come on, what's the actual goal here? The goal is not to avoid sounding ridiculous. The goal is different, and you need to look at the goal, which is figuring it out, trying to figure it out together. It's just a collective process that takes place between you and the other person or multiple other people. And this should be like the only objective and the only path, mind path or mental path that you need to take. So for example, like somebody's talking about this concept, and then you kind of have some ideas as to where to lead the conversation next. So like you want to express your idea. So don't think about how it's going to be perceived or how you're going to talk about it in the best manner. No, just try to figure out what that idea, that specific, like ripple of concept is. And then you try to maybe express it in a way that is clear to you. So like in the process, you're clarifying your thoughts, not trying to sound pretty and sound intellectual, but you're trying to clarify your own thinking so that you can deliver that speech in a very clear manner, and others are going to perceive it and receive the idea that you've been kind of like nesting inside of it, and that's probably going to produce and lead to other ideas that comes to their mind, and then the whole chain is going to continue building like that. It's very important for us to look at this process very closely and very rigorously and with precision, because sometimes it goes wrong. Sometimes we become very fussy about how it sounds, and oh my god, what if I like make this mistake of saying something that is not true, and I know it's not to not be true, but because I'm very rushy, I kind of spurred it out, and we'll say that you didn't want to say that. You can take your mistakes back all the time. Don't be afraid of like sounding very ridiculous just because you're negating yourself all the time. You're counter you're well, of course you're going to contradict yourself in so many ways, but you have to always keep in mind that if you say it and express it clearly and say exactly that you are feeling that what you said was wrong, then people are going to even trust you more, because now they know that you don't ever try to hide what you're thinking, and you express it very openly, and they can maybe like attach their own ideas to it and try to rectify it in their own ways as well. So like try to help you figure out what you were trying to say, so that the speech is not going to go down the wrong way, I guess. And another tip for becoming authentic would be to not care too much about like how much words you're gonna stuff in your speech, like how expressive your words are, how descriptive they are. If you focus on that, then you're focusing on something that is not the objective. The objective is to come up with the best ideas. And if you trust me when I say this because I've experienced it firsthand. If you have only one objective in mind, only one purpose in mind to come up with the best idea that can fit that concept that you're trying to figure out, and it can lead to something productive out of that concept, then like words are just gonna flood into your mind, because now ideas actually are the core of every word, anything. If there was no ideas, there would be no words. And words are latching onto these ideas all the time, and you just don't notice it. So don't try too hard to extract as much, vocabulary out of your lexicon and try to resurface all the deep rooted words that you've learned a long time ago, and you're trying to sound super intellectual just because you kind of don't have some ideas to to explore the discussion. And that's the next point, because like whenever you don't have the right idea, you're going to code it with having this like literary way of expressing it, and like having these verbose way of saying it, or this like lexical decoration, I guess you can call it decoration, because you're garnishing it with words without having a such a brilliant idea behind it. Like there's no foundation, and it's just like puff of air in a way. It's like, just fumes and just empty and hollow, and there's nothing in it. There's absolutely no idea, no pure, like no actual core concept that you're trying to discuss, and you're trying to like, okay, I'm just gonna conceal it with using words that are super super attractive and treacherous, I guess. And that's it. Concealing is like the recurring theme that I'm trying to like incorporate into this speech, because like I know that at the depth of all of these inauthenticity, at the depth of it, it's concealing that actually makes that rise up and like really be there. Like you're not gonna you're not gonna lack authenticity if you're constantly trying to tell the truth about your state of mind, and the opposite would be like you're trying to conceal the fact that you don't have any idea what you're talking about, or you just don't understand what's happening in this discussion, and your speculations are just so off. And that's when inauthenticity really meets your vicinity, I guess. What meets you, I guess, conceptually meets you, and you become awkward, and you feel awkward, and you lose the track of your own thoughts as well. And that's just like a vicious cycle that keeps on continuing on, because like first of all you feel a bit afraid, so like the first thing is like fear, so the next would be you conceal the fact that you don't know the fact, I guess. You don't know any knowledge about it. You don't have any knowledge about it. And then after that, it would be like feeling awkward, and that feeling of awkward then feeds onto this whole circle again and again, and it goes like that. So it's concealing the lack of knowledge, I guess, or lack of ideas. When you run out of ideas, don't try to do that then. So it's like you have to work on coming up with ideas, and that requires deep thinking and also like first principle thinking. For example, when you're trying to solve a math problem, your brain is like always trying to come up with idea, like that's the best way to train your mind, I would say. And also like trying to think about physics, reading and studying physics, that could be also another way to train your thinking and train that machine inside of your mind that can come up with ideas and can connect dots together, so that you're not lacking that capacity in your mind. That faculty is always active, and it's trying to bring on new and noble ideas to the to the surface, I guess. And so first principle thinking, critical thinking, these are all gonna help you. And putting things, like taking things apart, that's also gonna help you. Dissecting concepts and ideas, that's pretty helpful. I've been trying to do that my entire life, and I've been getting good at it, I guess, but I still need some more training, so much more training, actually. I am not even like at the beginning of becoming a good speaker or a good thinker in a way. I'm not even at the beginning of being a very brilliant writer. Like I am very far removed from that ideal version of myself that like can think about anything on spot and without too much like of of filler words or pauses or hesitation about certain things to say. Like my statements are just gonna roll out of my tongue, and that's what I want. That's what I really am aiming for and aiming at. So it's probably gonna come to me if I train myself too hard. And well, in the process of training, I said you have to actually train your thoughts. And one way to do it is to study physics and study all sorts of sciences so that your mind is much more connected to the realm of ideas. And there's too much knowledge and information that is running around your head all the time, so that you're never actually going to run out of any initiative for those processes of thoughts to take place. You're always going to have that inside of your mind. And also like writing actually trains your mind in such a brilliant manner that like you're always solving problems when you're writing. You're trying to get to the bottom of the matter at hand, and you're trying to put them apart, trying to take them apart, dissect the whole concept, trying to put them into an organized unit. So like passages should be in very teeny in very neat, in a very neat organized section that you can just like come from a general idea to the specific idea, and then conclude your whole entire idea, what you achieved at the end conceptually, and like what's the meaning of all of it is. And writing, so writing every single day, like at least like for 2 hours, just dedicate to writing every day. And at first your mind is going to be blank, and you're probably going to feel very weird writing about something that you're not very apt speaking about. But as times go on, then as time goes on, not as times go on, you know grammatical issues here. But as time goes on, you become very much comfortable with the fact that you don't know something. It's all about becoming comfortable with that hollow section of your brain that doesn't actually contain any real information and valuable input that can contribute to the whole topic, I guess. So it's getting comfortable with that, and the more you expose yourself to that lack of knowledge, the more you're comfortable with it, and the less fear you're gonna face when you're speaking about it, because now you know that you don't know, and that's very real to you, and you're gonna say that you don't know that. And so like you're not gonna conceal anything, and the inauthenticity or lack of authenticity is going to fly out of your world, and it's just gonna be eliminated and eradicated forever. So yeah, I probably talked too much about it, but that's exactly what I wanted to say on this session of speaking, and I hope that it was helpful at some point, I guess. Thank you so much for listening.